Okay, so let's start. Good morning, everyone. My name is Faris Pradana. I'm from SBMITB, program number 4. Today, I'd like to give a presentation for Economic and Business Landscape Analysis class. The topic is about the fossil fuel subsidy reforms in Indonesia, how the consumer reacts, and what policymakers can learn. So to give you the context, the introduction is in 2014, the Indonesian government doing some reformation in subsidy where they divert the fund for fossil fuel into another sectors such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, etc. So I would like to know in details about the consumers' reaction and what the government can do to solve this kind of issue. The first one is about the fuel subsidy problem. The first problem that could appear is about the fiscal burden. The data we get from the World Bank is about 211 trillion per year, the number of fossil fuel subsidies that uh, happens in one country. And these numbers could fund 5 times more for schools and hospitals. The second one is about the inequality. The subsidies that given into the people is more beneficial into the higher income. So the number is 45%. These numbers getting from the Bitan and Lontoh. So if the subsidy said that it to helps the poor, but in fact the subsidies is more beneficial for the wealthy household. The third one is about the climate cost. So when the subsidy of fuel is still going on, the Indonesia is locked in the carbon, is locked in dirty energy because the number of the cost for the fossil fuel is very cheap. And then all the industry, all the commercial are using this fossil fuel. So the investment for solar wind, solar panel, and also for the wind turbine is very, very rare happens because it's quite expensive and Indonesia doesn't have a choice to use the renewable energy. So this is the problem that occur from the fuel subsidy. The second one, when the government stops the subsidy and try to divert the fund into the other sectors, this is the response from the consumers. The price of the fuel is increasing because the numbers of demand is increasing, is the same, but the number of supply is decreasing, so the price is increasing. In short term, people still buy the gases because they don't have any kind of alternative. They have to go to the office, go to the school using the same bike, same cars, and also the same public transportation. They don't have any choices to go to that place. But in long term, when people have more alternative, there are a lot of routes from Transjakarta, a lot of routes from MRT, and also from another public transportation. These people can adjust with the numbers of with the cost of fossil fuel. So they can left it like little by little and then adjust themselves to use the public transportation more and switch their bikes, switch their cars into the electric vehicle. And about the income divide, so to give you the example, for the high income household where they get 20 million IDR in salary, they just use 2 million. It's just 10% of their total income. But for the low income, if their salary is only 3 or 4 millions, if they use the income for the fossil fuel, for the cooking, for the fuel for the bikes or for the cars, it up to 1 million or 2 millions is almost half of their income. So it really hurts the low income household compared to the high income household. The third one, this is the impact into the women where they are a working housewife, a working mom. There are a lot of problems that we can detect on this. The first one is the time poverty trap because based on the data from UNDP 2014, The woman in low-income households spends 30% more time on fuel costs. So the time they use for example, queuing to get the LPG, to look for wood in the forest, in the jungle, and then the time they cook and etc. It's already consume their time. So it is just make the time they can use for another beneficial things like generating more income for education or another things is used for this kind of activities. The second one is about the health and safety risk. Women spend their time, we're talking about the traditional cooking where they are using the wood and also the kerosene, so it generates more smoke. And also the woman, when they cook using this stove, they will inhale the smoke where it's very not good, and it can cause premature deaths up to 50,000 cases, data we get from WHO in 2022. And then this is very concerning for the women and also our next generation. And the third one is about the economic opportunity costs. This is still relating into the first factors. So when the women spend on fuel like 2.5 hours daily, they could use it to learn, they could use it to go to school, rather than they collecting the wood from the jungle or the forest and then they put it in the household cooking. They can use it for learning by reading the book or using the online courses and another things like uh, generating more income, doing the second job or third job. It's more beneficial for the household. So this energy policy is not about the high income but and low income, but also about the gender policy. The river must account for women's unpaid labor. So what should the government do about this subsidy reform? Here are the strategies that we could suggest, and we hope that this strategy could be very useful for the government to be applied in all the sectors. The first one, the strategy is immediate relief for the vulnerable groups. It's for the low-income household. So we can give some kind of targeted cash transfers using the program Keluarga Harapan or Bantuan Langsung Tunai. And data from the World Bank, it could offset the 80% of price shocks impacts. And then we also can use the DTK, data terpadu kesejahteraan sosial. So the targeted BLT is correct, is right to the target. So it's not giving into the medium or higher income, but really targeted into the low income. The second strategy is about the transportation revolutions. So the hope is, the expectation is the expansion of MRT where they could go to the north route, to the west route, and also the east route. It also makes the people will be more interesting to use the public transportation because of the convenience, because of the price also. And then in 2030 by IEA, it said that there will be 10 million electric motorbikes. So in Jakarta itself, in Jakarta, Jabodetabek, Java Island, there are a lot of motorbikes. If they could change this fossil fuel based motorbikes into electric vehicle, it will be very beneficial into the consumer. And the second one, we also have to introduce some kind of transport voucher into the rural area. For example, if there is a bus using the bioenergy, if people would like to use it, there will be more cheaper if they're using angkot or using microLED that using the fossil fuel. The third strategy is about the clean energy transition. Data from IRENA 2021, if the solar subsidies can cut the household energy cost by 40%. So the houses using solar panels, they could get subsidy, so the cost of the electricity is much cheaper. It will be very beneficial for them. And then we should distribute the LPG into all the cities or the towns in Indonesia, not only in the big city, because there are still a lot of households using kerosene, stove, and also wood to cook. So if this kind of conventional cooking could be replaced using LPG, it could reduce the number of emission of carbon dioxide annually. And the last thing, we should build the public trust. So how to build the public trust? We could give some kind of illustration and calculation into the people where there are some kind of data, the numbers of, for example, 100 billion IDR for the fossil fuel subsidy could make 5 hospitals or could make 10 schools. So we could make the calculations, compare it, and then share it into the media so people can understand, and then use some kind of media influencers to spread about it, and just not talking in narrative. And then we also could leverage the influence of what we call it kepala daerah or orang terpandang, like the leader of the community, to socialize this kind of renewable energy. So they could give like people should use the solar panel, people should use the transportation using the biogas bus for the buses. So this is socialized for the people that has been accepted in the community. And then in the future, if this strategy could be applied very well, and all this strategy is running very smooth, what could happen in Indonesia? The first one, in economic factors, there will be a freed up funds could build 800 new schools, 4 hospitals annually, because the numbers up to 200 trillion. So it could make a lot of education centers and also hospitals for the healthcare. And it also create the new jobs related to renewable, where the people, they are manually usually work as a labor in a construction site. They could work as a technician for the solar panel. So it could reduce the emission and also increase the salary of this labor. The second one is about the environmental. We could achieve the Paris Agreement 5 years early, because the number of emission, it will be reduced very fast. The number of coal plants could be closed, it will be retired, because the number of renewable energy has been increasingly added. And then we could prevent 120 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions by 2035. And the last, which is about the social, it could create the universal clean cooking access by 2017, because the numbers of LPG, the numbers of LPG distributed into all the cities and town is equal. So it's not only focused on the big city, but also distributed into the small cities. And also the gender gap in energy poverty could be half, data from UNDP, because there will be a lot of businesses in solar panel, wind turbine that could be led by a woman. So that's all about the subsidy reform in Indonesia. I hope this presentation will be useful. If there is a question, just leave it in the comment. Thank you.